with the previous two films, we've begun to shape a mix using UAD-powered plugins, primarily focusing on the two parts that we recorded at Real World Studios, the vocal and the guitar. In this film, we're going to be adding bespoke UAD effects to other parts within the mix, as well as beginning to explore some parallel mixing techniques. The first part we're going to turn our attention to is this vintage string synth line, which bears all the hallmarks of classic instruments like the Selena. This is providing a rolling melody through the tune, but what we want to do is to add some extra air and fizziness to the top end of the part. We could choose any number of EQs, but we're particularly interested in the Maag EQ4 for this purpose. So we're going to set that up on an insert. In particular, it's the air band at the very top of this part which we're interested in. Here we can select a frequency, and here we can dial in a huge amount of extra fizziness and air, almost like an exciter plugin. Let's just listen to the part now and introduce the air band as we listen back. That's adding a really pleasing fizziness to the top of the mix. Next, let's turn to the bass. We want to add some compression here, and for this we're going to turn to the classic Teletronics LA2A leveler. This gives us a gain dial on the left-hand side and a peak reduction on the right-hand side. And these two dials alone can add richness, punch, bite, and crunch. Let's have a listen to it in action. You can really hear how transients and tone are affected by just these two dials. But if you want something a bit richer and warmer and you're worried that it will overload the mix, remember that you can always simply just drop the level of the fader in your DAW's mixer. Let's put this bass part into the track now. That's great, now the bass has got much more power. We want to add more bite to the guitar and bass parts, and for this we're going to set up a parallel distortion channel. This involves setting up a new auxiliary, and on this we're going to set up the Raw plugin. Across just 3 dials, this allows us to configure a whole range of possible distortion treatments. Let's have a listen to Raw in action and set up something which suits the guitars. So as you can hear, distortion introduces more drive and filter rolls out the top end, effectively like a low pass filter getting rid of unnecessary brightness. Let's put this guitar part into the track and find something which suits in context. Something like that is working well, so let's add that to the other guitar part as well. And also add a little of the same treatment to the bass. We probably won't need as much on that particular track. However, overall, the effect is really dominating and it's suddenly overwhelming the mix. So with parallel distortion channels, it's a good idea to drop the fader to 0, get rid of the treatment altogether and slowly introduce it as you play back your mix to set the right balance. So now we know why those channels are called parallel channels. They run alongside the original parts in the mix, adding a new separate treatment. Let's add one more effects treatment. The final few words of each of our vocal phrases might benefit from an individual delay treatment. So to set one of these up, the first thing we're going to do is to group all of our vocal parts together so that they can access this new delay as one. Then, from this group channel, we're going to set up a new auxiliary bus, and to it, we're going to add the Cooper time cube delay. The first thing we're going to do is to turn on sync so that the delay times are in time with the track. And then on the left, we're going to add a half note delay, and on the right, a quarter note delay. We've got tone controls here to control the rate of treble and bass decay. And what we're also going to do is to make sure that we're in wet solo mode, because this new effect is coming in on auxiliary, so it can provide only delay. It doesn't need to have any dry signal in it at all. Let's hear these phrases now with this new delay part added.
You always take the best of me. You always leave the rest of me.
That's going to be really nice. Let's increase the decay time so we're hearing more delays, more echoes as those phrases end.
You always take the best of me. You always leave the rest of me.
The only problem is that, of course, the delay is smudging the first parts of the phrase where we don't really want to hear it. So what we're going to do is open up Logic's automation mode and go and find the send level to this new delay, and we're going to draw a line to ensure that it's only activated on the parts of the phrase that we want. And we'll have a little less on this little ad-lib right at the end. Let's hear that now.
You always take the best of me. You always leave the rest of me.
Let's listen to that in context and remember that if the delays are too loud, we can control their volume on the return fader here. Automating effects is a really nice way of keeping them vibrant and moving within your mix. In this episode, we've added some bespoke effects to various parts of the mix. We've taken the string line and added more fizz with the Maag EQ4. We've added extra compression to the bass with the LA2A. We've set up a parallel distortion treatment using Raw. And finally, we've set up some vocal delay spins using the Cooper Time Cube. The mix is done now, and it's time to move on to the mastering stage.